Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
It's kind of, where legacies, I guess, are made in the playoffs, not just winning games, but winning, those later games like AFC, NFC championships, winning Super Bowls. Like that's how you're going to be remembered at the end of the day.
Play action, Stafford on the move, stops, finds his man, touchdown Williams. Pressure off the edge, down goes Darnold, Kobe Durant. Darnold balls out. Picked up by Burse. Off to the races. And gone for the touchdown. Get the ball out in the screen. Under 20 to go. Wide open. Allen touchdown. Darnold completes to Hawkinson. And he is in for the touchdown. And boy, did the Vikings need that.
I mean, we knew what we were playing for today. It was go get this win, but man, it's for the people of Los Angeles struggling right now. It's been unbelievable to watch the whole community, the state, the country kind of get behind them. It's a tough time to be back there, and we're just happy that we came out and played like this tonight to get something to be happy about.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. What is going on?
You sounded so professional. It's like, oh my gosh, this must be a good day.
Well, every once in a while, after I've been doing this for like 18 months, I accidentally sound like I know what I'm doing.
Shoot, well, what's my excuse after 18 years?
I don't know. I got nothing.
Well, 20. I'm just going to stop adding because it's probably a few more than that.
Not as many as Shano. I know that.
It's close.
I am old. Shane, is today 30?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? 30 years in radio for that guy.
It's a long time.
That is a long time. You know what I was doing 30 years ago today?
Trying to find a new knockoff jersey to wear, probably.
Probably, yeah. I was like second grade.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there trying to maybe.
Had you gotten rid of the comb over?
No, probably not. Probably not at that point. Well, just out there rocking my Steve Young jersey. And actually, I don't think I had my Steve Young jersey by that point. I don't think I got that until like 4th or 5th grade.
Steve Young. Was that your first jersey?
No. My first jersey was a 1996 Dream Team Scottie Pippen jersey.
Oh, my gosh.
That was my first jersey ever.
Yeah.
Then Steve Young was my second.
Mine was Terry Bradshaw.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I think I had like a knockoff Lynn Swan.
Would you only like Lynn Swan now?
No.
Did you like him then?
Yeah.
Just because Steelers guy?
Yeah, I don't love Terry Bradshaw now.
Yeah.
Like it's waned over
at the time though you were
45 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I was probably
I remember going through the JCPenney and Montgomery Ward catalogs.
Yeah. That's JCPenney's where I got the Steve Young jersey.
Just to go through the jerseys for Christmas. But then I would end up always going to the same action figure section, and I would crumple the pages.
Try and get another He-Man?
No, but I did. That's funny you bring that up. I did watch about 6 or 7 episodes. Saturday night about 3:30 in the morning, I watched He-Man.
What are you doing?
I'm dead serious.
There's nothing wrong with it. I just bought the entire series.
No, not the He-Man, Shane. The 3:30 in the morning on Saturday.
I was up early.
Well, or did you go to bed at all?
Yeah, I was probably asleep for a couple hours.
Okay,
maybe 3.
Then you're like, it's time to watch some He-Man.
I just was in the mood for like a car. I looked for the Transformers, but I couldn't get it to load.
Masters of the Universe way better
than Transformers.
Yeah,
I like
but Transformers is pretty good.
The new not spinoffs, but the last 6-7 years when they've been coming out with some He-Man stuff. I like those.
Yeah, they're much better.
Drawings better. But the old school He-Man is pretty legit for when it was. Because, I mean, that's like early 80s.
And they always had that message at the end. What would He-Man do?
Good detail,
Yeah.
I like the drawings, yeah.
Yeah.
It was very, very well done.
I liked Transformers a lot. I never really got into He-Man.
I love the Transformers.
Yeah.
Coach Upman was into He-Man too.
Was he?
Yeah, he had the action. So is that in Star Wars? He had like the action figures.
See,
he had most of the cool toys.
Yeah.
I think he was the first one to have Shane, what was the one-up from Atari? Was it Coleco?
Oh, like a gaming system?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
this is like pre-Nintendo?
Yep.
Okay.
And he and I both got Nintendo roughly the same time. He used to wear me out in Double Dribble.
Dude, I love that game. Double Dribble?
Yeah, so he got pretty good. He was the first one that I remember like utilizing the battery for track and field.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So he was nice.
He's been gaming the system since he was a kid.
Yeah, and but yeah, I think it wasn't Coleco. It was I don't know. It was better. It was better than Atari. And he had it, and I can't remember what it was. Sega maybe? No, it wasn't Sega.
Sega was pretty early. I don't think it wasn't Atari
that
early. Yeah.
No, that was first person I knew that had Sega was a dude I used to know named David Bertley.
Really?
Yeah. And me and Crabmatic would go over there and play Madden, like early Madden.
Ooh. Okay.
But what system was that? I can see it.
I'm trying to I can't find it.
I don't know.
I asked a couple other different questions on the Google machine. I couldn't figure it out.
Oh, yeah, I've seen you Google. That's a struggle.
Text Huffman, see what he's doing.
Oh, man, my man got it.
What?
It was in television.
Oh, nice.
Dang.
Who was that?
Oh,
John?
Nope.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if he wants me to put him out there.
Well, early. John on the
it was in television. Yep, and Boke's got it too.
Yeah, John and Husker Dominator on the Twitter on the YouTube feed both got it too. So they're helping you out.
I know. Listen, this is if you don't know anything, these guys are way better than.
Yes, they're all
Google.
I would say they're way better at Google and stuff than I am. Yeah. Or maybe I should just ask them.
I figures Abdul would know because that dude was a game head.
Really?
Oh my gosh, this dude, and he was older too, so he had to set up in his room. So we would go to his room.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, I'm going down. I can't even remember what it was, 627 or, whatever.
Yeah.
And if you could survive the scorpion in his room, and all the other. Snakes and stuff to mind your own business.
So he's like rocking like a terrarium in there.
Yeah. Oh. So he had a snake and he had a scorpion and he had the gaming system.
Nah, I'm cool.
No, he was way ahead of the game.
Yeah,
those were the days.
That's how it was.
Like those were the days.
That's how it was when I was a freshman. Me and my buddy that played basketball together we'd just go to his room all winter basically. Mm-hmm. And play NBA Live like 06 or something. Yeah, it was good. It was the good.
And that was
went through a whole season.
We were knocking off Bill Walsh too. So
yeah.
And everybody kind of you could play with your a regular team,
yeah,
right, like season. But everybody kind of had their all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he's a California guy, so he was SC. I like Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't very good. So I had to be kind of grimy.
Yeah, North Carolina back then would have been a little.
But everybody kind of had their
squad.
Yeah, there was no real over.
Who had Notre Dame?
I don't know if anybody did, because even like in Coach K, we would go over to like Coach Held and stuff,
mm-hmm.
and like everybody kind of had some guys were Maryland, some were Duke, some were UMass. Like everybody kind of there was no. Well, I'll wait for the next one so I can play with.
Yeah.
It just seemed to work out that way.
The reason I asked is because I have this very distinct memory of I think it was Clinton Childs.
Yeah.
When I was a kid getting his autograph and he had he was wearing a Notre Dame jacket.
His collection is outstanding, and he would keep them in like these clear bags.
Really?
He has he has some jerseys.
Yeah. That's what it wasn't a jersey, it was like one of those jacket pullover deals.
Yeah.
Not like a starter jacket, like a lighter one than that. And I distinctly remember it. And I'm like, that's weird. He plays for Nebraska. Why is he wearing a Notre Dame thing?
Man, listen, he had a sweet, because I was kind of my hangout in high school sometimes. And he had like this life-size thing of Eric Dickerson that he would put kind of by his door.
Oh, really?
That thing was so sweet. Like,
because you're a big Eric Dickerson
I'm
guy.
a big ED guy.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
But he actually had his running style.
Yeah.
And I was a short, squatty dude. He was like long because he was long.
Yeah.
And he used to wear the neck roll too. He looks. I mean, I'm telling you,
looked like a menace.
Yeah, going for about 260 at night. Yeah, he was. But it was like the tie that binds. That's why it's interesting to see. I was talking about like Nebraska and bowl games and traveling and stuff and learning to hang out with one another.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a big deal. Like I think one of the things that'll come out of like this college football playoffs and some of these teams that have won a couple of games is there's something about learning how to hang out with one another.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, 'cause you're around each other a lot. And especially kind of over
because football doesn't travel a lot together for long stretches. Usually it's get in, get out.
Yeah, a couple days. I mean, we've seen your schedule,
Two,
right?
Like day and a half.
So, because most of the time, you leave sometime after the show Friday, and you're back sometime Saturday, depending on when the game is, right?
Always.
There's been days I don't think you've been gone 24 hours, right? So you go in and out. You're not really spending that much time together. You're going in, checking in the hotel.
And it's so businessy. So that was one of the first things that I was watching during the bowl game. Because I'm just telling you, like in this day and age with NIL and people not wanting to have their business in other people's pockets and, because that's hard. Just the natural compare and contrast. So the better you get along, the better those things are going to be.
Well, we always talk about kind of the relationship aspect of like, hey, relationships win. And I think we tend to think about it with like player to coach relationships, which obviously that matters. But you have to think about, okay, if I really like the guys I'm hanging out with and the guys I'm in the locker room with, that probably has as much of a factor on whether you want to stay or go from a place than your coaching. Because you spend more time with your teammates than you do with the coaches, right?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, you definitely want to get along with your coaches and you want to make sure they have your best interest at heart. But getting along with your teammates matters infinitely more than getting along with the coaches.
Especially now. That's why I'm still riding with culture and chemistry, at least for a little while longer.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Why do you
I mean, because and not to say that Ohio State isn't. They just weren't like that for 80% of the season where they look like this cohesive unit.
Yeah.
And they were supremely talented. Because there are a lot of talented teams that are at the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think Penn State was one of the most talented teams. I don't think Notre Dame is one of the most talented teams. So I still think I still think there's something to, like, I don't know what you call it. I'm not just going to keep throwing around the C word.
Cohesiveness?
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
The different C word?
I think there's something to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know what to do with an Ohio State, right? Because
that's because they are so gifted.
Well, and I agree with you. For most of the season, they have not seemed
they look disjointed
on the same page. But
go back and watch the Nebraska game.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
they were getting whipped up front.
Yeah,
couldn't run the ball. Short yardage was awful. Now Nebraska continued to be good at stopping short yardage, so maybe that's not
probably not a huge indictment.
But it was like they were booing in the third quarter.
Yeah.
They were booing in the second quarter in that stadium.
Well, and then you've got
booing
a very similar way the game played out with Michigan, right? They got whipped.
Yeah,
they got whipped up front, and I don't know if something like that sort of gels a team. You would think if they weren't super cohesive, then it would fracture them a little bit, right? But if it doesn't,
unless you are that gifted,
right? But if it doesn't, and it does bring you together a little bit, then the giftedness might start taking over.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. Now this is crazy, but I just know the team well, so it comes to mind. Not that it's a North Carolina thing, but I remember those guys couldn't wait for Caleb Love to leave.
Oh, yeah.
And 2 months before, not even, a month and a half before that, he was carrying these guys.
But
they make this run, and it's like
they're kind of over him.
Yeah, this guy comes back, we're not. So you just never. Sometimes you can be that good, and it masks it. But
I think it's harder in football to be that good that it masks not being on the same page.
Yeah,
like I think that's harder in football than in basketball.
And I don't, I don't want to be like the guy that like knew we were good, to use us as an example, because I don't even know like real time if we knew we were that good.
In which year?
Any of them. I mean, to be honest, I don't remember us talking like
It seemed like
I don't think we were out of pocket in like 95 internally.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't think I'm misremembering. I
Do
mean,
you
some
think,
other guys could probably speak to it better, but
do you think that's a position group by position group thing at all? Because I'm just thinking about going back to some of the ways I've heard Vers or some of the other offensive linemen talk, where they're like, "Yeah, we would tell the other defensive line, hey, we're running right there. Good luck."
I mean,
and that's you know what
maybe.
I mean.
I don't know. Like they had big they had big personalities.
Yeah, because that to me sounds like you know how good you are if you're doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
At like 94, that's where I thought of when you said that is 94 because it was pretty grimy.
It was grimy.
94 was pretty grimy. 95, you may have still had the griminess in you, but the games didn't end up that grimy.
Yeah.
Right? Like you beating people's heads in.
That was this is a weird. It's just, but now like I think guys are like, I think the revisionist history is like, oh yeah, well, like we were pretty good. I don't know if we thought that in real time.
That's fair.
Maybe we did.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it though.
That's fair. I mean, I definitely.
I think part of the reason though.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got on this, but I think part of the reason is because it was so competitive. Like there was nothing really.
So that was my next question.
That etched in stone. I mean, even quarterback was competitive, and like
especially in 95.
We had
right?
the guy, right? So if that position could be competitive, then any of them could.
So yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was
defensive backfield was hectic?
Did it matter that maybe nobody felt safe in there? Not
maybe.
Because like that'll make you
unless you were up front, because those guys were. Those guys were different.
Yeah, so that maybe that is where it's
maybe
different.
That's where their personality.
Because the further you got away from the ball, it seems like the more your job was probably in question.
Yeah. So like for every like Peter, there was a Keneally.
Yeah.
Right. So Jason might have been super confident.
Yeah.
Keneally, not so much.
Sure.
He was a grinder. So you put those two together, I was like, it was. It's good balance.
Yeah, for sure.
You could have a. I mean, you had an Ed Stewart to kind of
tamp
it down, even though he was really good.
Yeah.
For a Baron Miles, you needed a Veland, right?
It's funny you bring up Jason Peter. We're actually going to talk to him this morning.
I'm glad we got him, man.
8 o'clock. Going to talk to our guy Jason Peter
in the big segment.
Got a big segment with Jason.
Do you realize I missed that the first time around, even though I was the one that asked? Because it was just interesting. It was just interesting talking to him when he was at the bowl games, and we were just talking about like feel, in preparation, and kind of how he felt about Notre Dame and some similarities. And I was like, you know what, we need to talk about that a little bit.
Notre Dame has a little 94 Nebraska feel to it.
Hey, do you see it's not late money, but like what's with the little rush? Did they miss the good number?
Oh, back on Ohio State?
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the line today or since we talked.
I saw some 8s last night.
Down to 8?
I continual 8 and 8.5s.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, really?
I still think that's too high. I mean, obviously I've been high on Notre Dame, but I can't believe it started where it did. 9.5, which is bonkers.
What are you seeing now?
I'm looking up right now what we've got. It is down to 8 evens.
Yeah, see?
So we were on 8.5 yesterday this time, down to 8 even on Ohio State Notre Dame. That shouldn't be bigger than a touchdown. That number should not be bigger than a touchdown.
No, I mean, listen.
I don't know. I get Ohio State's been whipping people. I also understand.
Here's the thing. You didn't get the sense that Ohio State was going to cover the other night
against Texas,
and it ended up being 2 touchdowns. So if it anything more than one score, like anything could happen at the end,
for sure.
So you know what I mean. So it's not.
I just look at it and I go, okay. I don't look at it as, hey, the game played out the way it did and ends up being 2 touchdowns. I look at it and go, hey, if Texas isn't a bunch of morons, it's tied at 21.
I'm just the sneaky thing about Notre Dame. Just go back and hit the Notre. They will hold the ball without scoring points sometimes.
Yes.
Even though quietly, the last quarter of the season, they scored.
Mm-hmm.
They scored points, but they have the ball a lot.
They're really willing to take the air out of the ball.
So it's like you could see just the way that they play, keeping it. But I was surprised yesterday because I was talking with my guy because he texted me. It was I don't even know what time it was. Probably 2:30 or 3 or something. And he said, "I'm going back with Rutgers." And it was Aaron, and I laughed. I just laughed.
Your DGen friend?
I was like, and I'm like, it fits. Like the number, the rank, unranked, on the road. It's everything that I would like.
Yeah.
Try to cap. I'm just like,
you just
didn't
for
the last two. No, I'm
Rutgers
like
anymore
because it was the same
story.
Same story.
Yeah.
The previous two. And then all of a sudden you're watching it, and it didn't start out well.
Mm-mm.
But then once they got it,
dialed a little bit.
Well, UCLA should have been up more at that. Once it was tight at the half, I'm like, oh man, UCLA ain't winning this game.
That's what Mick
and
Cronin,
they folded down the stretch.
That's what Mick Cronin means when he says his team is soft. Like what we saw yesterday, and maybe they're softer now because of what he said.
And they let Ace Bailey get going too.
Like that's why he called his team soft. Is what we saw yesterday.
I was, emotionally for Thursday, I was cheering for UCLA.
Yeah,
but that was Rutgers ATS all the way.
Yeah, it really was.
And begrudgingly, when I agreed with you on the Rams, I did not see it playing out the way that it did last night, though.
No, I didn't either.
That was incredible.
And there was kind of a critical stretch there, right? So I think so. Like early to mid second quarter, you go from.
Oh, you got that far?
What do you mean?
Ooh, second quarter.
You've got that stretch between
some telltale signs the first two snaps.
I get that, but just there was an opportunity for Minnesota to stay in this thing in that second quarter where you have the call with Stafford that gets brought back as an incomplete pass.
Can we talk about that for a sec?
Sure.
How is that incomplete?
I think.
Why wouldn't every quarterback do that?
Well, that's the real question, right? Because it's a hack if it's incomplete. Because he does. It felt a little Tuck Rule-y to me. The kind of way
like he's bent over and he just flips the ball.
He just flicks it. But because it was an intentional motion, like by the letter of the law, I get what you're saying. But by the letter of the law, it's an intentional motion. It's not knocked out of his hand. He has control over the ball.
So what if I'm trying? What if I'm? So they're just assuming it was because it was a forward motion?
Because it was an intentional motion.
Yeah, that was wild. And plus, it took too long to explain.
Yes. But you can see, like, he's got control of the ball, and then he flicks the wrist. And it's I'm not saying it's a good rule, but
I think he got bailed out even though he panicked.
Yeah, 100%. It was a panic move for sure. It's like one of those where you see guys going to the ground and they just kind of flip it.
All right,
it gets picked off.
So you're thinking 10-3. They don't get the call.
And
they get
then
the ball back.
Verse takes one back later. What's like 10 minutes later?
Yeah.
And then Verse takes a fumble back 10 minutes later. And all of a sudden, instead of 10-10, it's 17-3. And that kind of felt like curtains. But like there was a stretch in the second quarter where this could be a very different football game.
How much money in the last two games do you think Sam Darnold cost himself?
Oh, a lot.
50 mil maybe?
We can talk about that when we get back because the Vikings do have a decision to make. We're going to talk to a Vikings fan later too and Mike Schaefer at 9 o'clock. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, reminding you to keep that seatbelt fastened and make it click. It prevents injuries and saves lives, but only when worn properly. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB, you asked a question before the break. I thought it was a good question. I was proud of you. Hey, that's a good job.
Jump.
He said, how much money did Sam Darnold cost himself? And it's a big number, right? Because I think before the Lions game, you're looking at him and you go, hey, we probably need to sign this guy to a multi-year deal.
Right,
300,
yeah,
390, something in there. Maybe 110 if you're feeling froggy. Probably front load it with a signing bonus, and then you've got limited guaranteed money over the course of the few years.
Although he would get good guaranteed money up front.
Yes, it would end up being a good percentage of the number, but it wouldn't be extended over a lot of the contract, is my guess. They'd front load it so that they were committed to him for next year and had options after that. Now I'm guessing they franchise him.
Oh, boy. So franchising QB, that means he's going to get the average top 5 salary.
Which is going to be a lot.
For just the 1 year? Gosh, would you do that? To buy yourself time with JJ.
It's between 34 and 38. 34 is the transition tag, 38 is the non-exclusive tag million for a quarterback. So 38 million.
Oh yeah, so he roughly is 50, 55, 60 mil probably costs.
So that would be
if he gets franchised.
Yeah, so 38 million. I mean, you're probably looking at that in a signing bonus if you're doing multi-year. So if you want
roughly,
right?
Roughly, yeah.
Probably between 30 and 40.
Close, yeah.
Right? So if you give a multi-year deal, you're probably looking at that up front anyway. So maybe you do offer him the 3 years and give yourself the options instead of the franchise tag, because it probably doesn't cost you that much more.
I was texting with one of my he officiates, and we were talking, and he was noticing some interesting things about like calls seemingly like they were coming from New York versus kind of on the field, right? The delay with calls, and so I was kind of paying attention to that. And the first couple went the way of the Vikings. So after like the third time, and this is later on in the game, it was like the third quarter, and he's like, I'm telling you, some of these calls are coming from New York. Look how long this is. It's not like bang, bang on the field flag. I was like, I said, well, shoot. That's the
so
case.
He was saying flags were coming out as New York was telling them real time that it's a flag.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, and I have to go back and watch because I'm not kidding you. That's the first time I've watched a game in a while where I really wondered what was wrong with a guy's ability to process.
In Darnold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Because if you flipped over, and I typically don't do this, but I wanted to see what two other quarterbacks were. I wanted to hear
what they were saying.
What two other quarterbacks were saying. And just his inability to anticipate an open guy without being hesitant was crazy. The Rams played good defense. The front, but you're talking over 5 seconds sometimes.
Yeah, he had time.
And it's like,
not all the time, but he had time.
What is he? I just want to know what he was seeing.
You think it was just a seeing ghosts thing?
It is famous,
right?
With him, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's not pretend like this wouldn't be the first time that there had been an issue with him seeing things that weren't there in terms of pressure, in terms of coverages. You know, maybe he is just a choker.
You talking to a ghost?
Like, I don't necessarily like putting that on a guy, but
I kind of miss that voice from time to time.
You talking to
you talking to a ghost?
I love how he used to always laugh at his.
You talking to a ghost?
It would like buy him some time to the next one. I was.
Like, I don't like putting that on a guy. I don't know Sam Darnold. I don't have anything against. I kind of like Sam Darnold, frankly, and I was sort of rooting for him to do well over the course of the year, even if it was sort of tongue-in-cheek because of the Kyle Shanahan rehab that I kept talking about.
Yeah.
Which I have no idea if that's real or not. I just thought it was funny. The 49ers were bad, so I was trying to take credit for other people's success. But if I'm being honest. but like it wouldn't. Like, it's not out of the question that he's just a choker. Like, that's on the table. The pressure gets too much, and he doesn't process well.
I put it against his full body of work, and it's like, oh, okay, it could make sense.
Yeah.
But then I look at the first 15 games, and I'm like.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
16. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. You go back, you reround, you watch. I'm like, wow, check down, throw it. Ooh, Hawkinson, just hit him.
Yeah, just throw it.
Yeah, like the little over route for Naylor. The very next series, I watched Stafford under duress with a free rusher layer a ball over the shallow cross to the little deeper cross, and a hand going over his sight line, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching this. I'm watching two quarterbacks in juxtaposed positions that I have said the same thing about for almost their entire careers. Because I was a big, as Shane can attest, I was a big Stafford defender.
Me too.
When he was just putting up numbers in Detroit, and people said he couldn't,
couldn't win.
Yeah, didn't win at Georgia, and I'm like, no, I'm like
that dude can play.
Stafford is legit.
Yeah.
And so I got one guy right, but I may just have to wave the white flag on Sam.
So
as a 27-year-old.
You know what's funny is you're looking at two guys who are probably not hugely different talent-wise.
Oh no! No!
Right?
Very, very similar.
Like maybe Stafford has a little bigger arm. Maybe. I'm not.
But Darnold's the better athlete.
Yes, and there's not a ton of people you could even put in the conversation where you're not sure Stafford has a better arm because he's got one of the best in the league. But talent-wise, you're probably talking about pretty comparable guys.
They're very similar,
right? But to see the difference in results is sort of the epitome of why it's impossible to evaluate quarterbacks, right? Like if you put Sam Darnold and Matthew Stafford in this draft,
I would imagine they had to probably go back and look up their draft grades. I bet
Darnold's draft grade might be higher.
It's high. I bet you Darnold's would be higher
because he's a better athlete.
But they're comparable.
But they're in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
You put those two guys in the same draft. You put them in this year's draft, and it's just their profile, right? Blind resumes. There's a lot of people that would pick Darnold over Stafford, but it would be an argument for who goes number one, right?
It was.
That's why evaluating quarterback, because you don't know that about Matt Stafford unless you see it.
Yeah, you got to be in it,
right?
Yeah, you got to be in it.
But Matthew Stafford, and there's guys that look like they are in it in college, and then you go to the NFL and you're like, oh, he's not that guy.
I'll tell you one of the greatest lines that was so obvious but was so timely.
Mm-hmm.
When last year, when I thought Sims was going to be healthy enough to play,
mm-hmm.
and we're out on the field, this is early ahead of time. I
remember this.
I was talking to Coach Rule.
Yep.
He said, I think this is kind of how he said it, right? I think we're going to go with Harburg. He's healthier, put a full week together in practice, and the guys are kind of rallying around his command in the huddle. And he said, I'm just going to, and I didn't give pushback, but I'm like, man, like, not going to 50-50 this deal, or in my head, I'm not saying this out loud, but I think I kind of had this look like,
yeah.
I was like, huh. He goes, listen, I'm just going to tell you something about quarterbacks. He said, you never know what you're getting until you see them play.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went through this laundry list of like quarterbacks that he had gone through, that he had watched, and what happened at Temple with part 2 of the same guy running it back, and then what he found out at Baylor. He's like, you got to watch guys. They have to go through it before you can give real evaluations. And I just was like, all right.
A lot of guys.
It sounds like duh.
No, because that's not really how it is at any other spot, really.
And we still continue to take chances on quarterbacks
because there's not enough of them, right?
We still continue to take, even though like he's 1,000% right.
Yeah,
we still will evaluate this thing and think we know more than what the tape says.
That we can fix them because it wasn't his fault. It was. And listen, it's easy to blame it on the Jets.
We basically had a head coach come out and say his guy couldn't play.
Yeah.
And he needs more time. And the NFL was like, no. Sanchez, Mark, you're our guy. Carroll told you.
Yeah.
It's not ready. More seasoning.
Yeah. And it's really easy to blame it on the Jets, and you're probably not wrong. So that kind of muddies the water a little bit as well. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the La Vista location, of course. DB, it's funny to see the reaction of different fan bases in regards to this quarterback conversation, right? Because Grant on Twitter goes, "No way, capital WAY. I want him back at a premium." He's talking about Darnold. Discount.
Is this in the chat?
This was on Twitter.
Okay.
It says discount ... maybe ... He screwed himself last night. Signed, Vikings fan.
Okay.
In the chat, we've got David. As a Raiders fan, I'd take the Vikings QB situation in a heartbeat. And he's probably right. Like Shane, as a Raiders fan, would you take Sam Darnold next year, no questions asked?
Over what the Raiders have?
Over the Raiders' current quarterback situation.
David also said if Colt McCoy can do commercials, Sam Darnold can.
He might have something there.
Like, are you taking Sam Darnold, no questions asked, over your current quarterback situation?
If it's short.
Let's say
I say like a year or two.
How popular?
Max.
So
what do you think is changing for the Raiders in 2 years, Shane?
Well, they're going to have a different coach.
So is Bridge quarterback going to be? That's like the new?
I think it should be.
Gap.
It should be because
too high.
You're better off.
Is Bridge quarterback like the new RPO?
Yes. So it's the new 2-eye safety. It's going to ruin the NFL.
The problem is the Raiders do that too much. They go and they get somebody who is on the tail end of their career, somebody's on the downswing that maybe they can eke out maybe another year or two left of them. They just do that too much. And he's right. I would take that because it is better than what
DJ?
they have.
Or
yeah,
David?
Yeah, he's right. I would take that because it is better than what they have. But
I'll say this, like as a general, if I was like Omar Khan or any of these GMs or Owosu in Minnesota, I would not. No, I wouldn't. I would not take a bridge guy over the opportunity to find a franchise quarterback. I don't think.
So
now, if my team was really bad and I needed to protect my rookie quarterbacks,
protect the investment and the confidence,
maybe.
Because we've seen quarterbacks that I think are good get ruined.
But that's really the only time I could see doing a draft board or putting together an eval and saying, you know what, just let me keep this warm for a second while this guy goes. And I get it. Green Bay is the outlier.
Sure.
That almost never happens on their run of getting
and I'm
good
still
quarterbacks.
Not convinced of what Jordan Love is.
All right, but
still, yeah, they are the outlier and how they've done it.
Right. So I just don't think I would take a bridge guy.
So like if you drafted JJ McCarthy and he was healthy, you would have started him this year.
So I would have played him. I would have done what Atlanta did without paying Cousins the money. If I'm going to get a bridge guy, I'm telling that guy, you're only buying time. Like,
which I think is what Darnold was there for. He came in on a discount.
The thing about it is the talk started, and I don't know internally.
Sure.
But I'm just saying early on, the talk started when Darnold got off to the good start with preseason, where it was like, oh, maybe we don't have to rush.
Yeah. Which I think is positive.
No, wait a minute. So it depends on what the end game is.
Okay.
Right? So if your end game is to ultimately play McCarthy, then you got to probably nip that in the bud early. But it allowed to build.
So the Vikings are in a weird spot because they thought they were going to be good.
They were good.
Right. No, but they knew they were going to be good.
Yeah,
right?
See, that's the thing.
So that complicates things
It's
because
the exact same thing I said about Nebraska defensively and shuttling old for young and vice versa and really quick to having a quick trigger for position swaps defensively. They're good enough where you write it out. That's like the Steelers.
You're good enough. You just write it out.
You're good enough where if we can just fix this.
Can I bring that back locally for a different team?
Absolutely.
Is that why we don't get more Fedor Zugic minutes?
No. So for you, I think you have to get over. I don't know any other way to say it other than I don't think Zugic is the guy you think he is.
No, I'm not saying he's a savior. I'm really not. I don't think he's that. What I do think is this can't be a team that only has Stephen Ashworth and Jemiah Neal as ball handlers.
So your analogy, I'm just in my head.
Sure.
So you're saying they're close enough.
I think
where we don't want to take
the chance. They don't want to take the risk.
I don't know if I would consider him a risk.
I don't know what else the reason would be then to not play him because here's my issue, right? If you're Creighton and you're playing St. John's again, for instance, high pressure team, I believe Ashworth turned it over 10 times against them because there was not a lot of help ball handling, right? I believe the downside that they see with Zugic is defensive assignments and not really knowing where he's supposed to be. That's the risk, right? The reward is, hey, we have another ball handler. We have another capable offensive player to take some pressure off of Kalkbrenner and Ashworth and Neal and those guys, right? So what I think the rub must be is Creighton thinks they're good enough to make an NCAA tournament without having to take the risk of Zugic as opposed to throwing him out there and potentially missing the tournament.
In my head, I don't love the analogy at first blush.
Okay.
Because I think I have to. I'm taking into account track record. I'm taking into account development. So when I look at that staff and I look at Mac, I'm like, guy wins a ton.
He does.
he's been able to assimilate talent before.
He does have a track record of being conservative in these situations. I get it with his
rotation. No, that's here,
mm-hmm.
right? That's here. So then I ask myself, okay, at what cost?
Yeah.
So right now, what's the price that he's paying
mm-hmm.
for your analogy to not be playing your guy? It's not very high right now.
Well, maybe he thinks it is. Like, that's what I don't know, is what he views the cost as. What I view the cost as
like if it's a risk analysis thing,
yeah,
right, he would tell you, Ravi, it's very, very low. You're assuming it's more monumental than it is.
Well, are you asking what he thinks the risk is or what he thinks the reward is?
The reward.
Okay, because I'm talking about what the risk is. I think the risk is relatively low because best case scenario as constructed, this Creighton team
now, maybe if they hit the skids, I could see what you're saying, but not yet.
Well, okay, but what is this team then? Like, what is this? What's the best case scenario of this team as they're currently constructed?
I think it's kind of what we thought it was.
I mean, without Pop, this is a lower ceiling team.
Yeah.
This is best case, in my opinion, best case scenario. You make the tournament, bounce to the first game.
Okay, that's okay though. And I'm not saying that's okay. Like, hear my heart.
Okay.
You started out with something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a little bit of it has been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing the best that you can do.
Yeah. Along
the way, you have to change your expectation level.
Sure.
I think you have to change your expectation level. You say it so this is what rubs me the wrong way. You say it as though it's no big deal because you're comparing it to the accomplishments of other personnel groups with the same name.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, I mean, you get to the tournament and you get bounced in the first round. Where this team is right now?
Where this particular roster is, right?
I'd say that's pretty good.
That's the best case scenario for them, I think.
Like, that's how you have to look at it, though.
Do you, though?
Well, otherwise you're delusional. What are they? Ask yourself. It's with anything.
Mm-hmm.
What am I capable of versus what I'm actually doing?
So you're talking about maximizing,
and then that should set the fluidity of your expectation.
You're talking about maximizing a roster versus your expectation level from different years.
I'm talking about maximizing the opportunity given what I'm dealing with.
So if I'm sitting here and I go, okay, best case scenario
Does that
for
make
this.
Sense?
Yeah, I do. But if I'm sitting here and I go, okay, I'm Greg McDermott. I've been here 15 years, won a ton of games, right?
Let me give you a different analogy. You can keep Creighton in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota won 14 regular season games.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say they maximized the opportunity?
The
answer is yes.
In the regular season, yes.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you look at what you and McCarthy got hurt, so I'm not going to say gave up.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at what you did, allowing your quote-unquote bridge guy and watching him flourish, you maximized the opportunity given what you were dealing with. So I get how Minnesota Vikings fans will feel, right? Because he's inexplicably shaky last night, 100%. And the week before against Detroit. He regressed back to more of who he had been throughout his entire career. But for that stretch, if you would have said, Sam Darnold, Minnesota Vikings will be your starting quarterback, you will finish second in your division behind the Detroit Lions, who will win a franchise record games and get to the playoffs with 14 regular season wins. Will you take that? I'm not even sure you could finish the statement.
Yeah.
Same as if you said, hey, Coach Mack, hey, NC tournament, I'll give you an NCAA tournament bid today to get bounced in the first round. You're not finishing that sentence. He's saying, yes, I'm absolutely taking that.
He might say yes. I'm not sure I would.
Well,
I'm saying that's probably the fundamental difference in how we feel about the situation.
He's realistic.
Because, well, I don't see a huge difference personally of losing in the first round in a game you probably know you're going to lose in the first round versus, we made the NIT instead. Like, to me, that season doesn't feel entirely different.
Yeah.
That's CB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Jason Peter coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
33-yard line, backfield in the eye, wide outs both ways. And here is a fake. Druckenmiller on the keeper, loses the football. It's picked up by the Huskers, and they're going to run it in. Jason Peter for the score. Don't forget one thing.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Jason Peter, former Husker great. Jason, how are you this morning?
I'm all right. How you guys doing?
Good. JP, this is what you get for answering the phone when you're, supporting family at bowl games. This what happens, man. So I appreciate it.
I know. But, what an experience. I'm a little under the weather right now. I had when we were flying home, his mother and a kid were waiting there for the bathroom. And I'm sitting there, kids coughing all over me, and I'm thinking, oh, man, God dang it. Like, I know I'm going to go down now. There's definitely something flew in my mouth or in my ear or something.
Hey, so how was it? You're obviously familiar with Miami. You're down there with the crew. How were you the only one that so who was the ringleader? Was it DJ? Was it Grant? Like, whose idea was it? Damon? Whose idea was it to say, hey, if they get to Miami, let's all have a reunion?
Yeah. I think it was Damien's idea actually, because he had been with he was with DJ and the family the week before in New Orleans when all that stuff happened. Down there with the guy driving into the crowd and the IEDs all over the place. But the funny thing is that once he got me to commit, right? I was committed, and I was still trying to get Grant to commit. Damien backs out, says he's got like some work thing or something he can't go to, and then Grant can't go. So I literally go down there solo. So it was just me and DJ. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Hey, so you're kind of watching this deal. You're super familiar with Miami. One of the things that I was kind of talking to you about in a hurry was getting a vibe for like the cohesiveness, like what the kind of run that this team is on, man.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that it is what it is, or you think this is something that you could replicate in this day of NIL and college football, the way that this team is kind of got that next man up thing?
Yeah, it's impressive to watch. It really is. And then when you kind of get around the team as well, and you're meeting the kids and all the players at the team hotel and stuff, you start to see, okay, these kids, like, they kind of, they're probably I'd say like better kids than we were. Like they're good, but like they're not that we had bad kids. I think for the most part we had good kids as well. But it's really like Marcus Freeman has made it a point to make sure this is going to be the best team, that I think I can build. And the culture word gets talked about a lot out in South Bend, and even with talking to the kids and trying to get a feel for the way that they think and everything. Like I think he's recruiting like pretty good kids, like winners and winners. Like that's the thing I think that he's looking for the most when going out to recruit. Like you can be an all-star dude, but if you're coming from some 2-10 team that the team's fighting at in between timeouts and all this stuff, like that's just not going to fly. Like he wants winners down there, and I think that's kind of that's what T.O. looked for when he was when he was coaching the teams that we were part of. Like you think of a lot of guys that came into the program, and that was the only thing that was important to us, was winning and winning championships. And it was the right group of guys that came together at the right time, and that's what happened. But I mean, are they going to have enough, against the Buckeyes? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, certainly on paper, they're probably going to be a little, they'll be the underdog there. But, on any given night, I mean, nobody thought they were going to beat Georgia, right? Nobody thought they were going to beat Penn State. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is just a team of destiny, that they're just bound to win an out of here.
Jason,
but it's impressive, DB. It was.
Yeah.
Jason, does it give you, I guess, any hope for the future of college football? We hear all about NIL and transfer portal and things like that. And obviously you look at Ohio State and how that team was put together. Does it give you any hope that a team like Notre Dame can get to where it did at this point in the season, that those things that you talked about, guys that are winners, guys that are character guys, and kind of that team culture, that still can matter just as much as all the other stuff?
I do. I think I don't know how many of those teams that you're going to get right now. Yeah. I think at some point the pendulum will swing, right? Like everything, it's all cyclical, right? Like at some point all the speed, in football lies on the defensive side, and then 5-10 years later it's on the wide receiver side, and it just keeps going, right? It just keeps spinning, and I'm guessing, like this is going to be the run here for a while is going to be guys trying to get as much money as they possibly can. But I think at some point you're going to realize, like, okay, well, you can do that, but you might be playing on a loser, for most of your career. And, they may, hopefully kids will start to see, like, hey, we can all get paid a whole lot more if we're actually a good football team, you know, and especially like at a place like Nebraska where there's such a following and such fan support. I mean, that's, you know, whenever I'm down there around the guys, you know, at the university, and I just keep trying to tell them, like, you guys, you know, I know you see like the attention you get right now. I said, but wait, if you guys actually commit to this thing and you win, you have no idea what's lying ahead of you. You know what I mean, DB?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
They have no idea what's lying ahead of them.
Yeah.
And if they could just get a taste of that, I think it would start to change things for sure, at least around here. I think Coach Rule has done a good job of trying to you know, find the right guys that he thinks is going to be, you know, good fit guys here. So we'll see.
You talk about things that are cyclical. It seems like lighter, quicker is back in vogue, right? Especially along D lines, right? I'm looking at I'm looking at how these guys play and some of the schemes and being able to play with like two eyes, and it's different. Yeah. Would you rather be playing now or when you were playing, given you were a lighter, quicker, more explosive guy? Or how do you what's ideal? I want to start on the front, and if I'm recruiting, how am I trying to play along the D line in 2025?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I mean, you watch these things, and obviously you watch, you know, just locally here in Nebraska. And, you know, you really saw it, I guess, a lot, even when Pelini was here and he had Ndamukong, and, you know, the constantly, like, you know, he's up, he's down, he's over the 3, he's over the nose, oh, he's out on a 5. You know, like, there's so much now of just trying to confuse the offense and moving guys around and doing all that stuff. You know, I had this conversation with a couple of the Notre Dame guys, because it was funny. Like, DJ, obviously, whenever we're walking around and he'd see, you know, a new player, he'd want to introduce me, and he'd say, yeah, you know, Jason played at Nebraska. And you know, the eyes would just kind of stay the same. And he goes, yeah, he won 3 national titles. It was an All-American, you know, like 14th pick or whatever. And the kid's eyes then all of a sudden would get big. They don't remember. You know, they weren't even born, obviously, when we were winning those championships. But it's funny how you see them kind of, you know, like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, I've heard of this Nebraska. You know, they've written and done shows about that Nebraska, and you know, so it was neat. But you know, when you know, looking at where I'd want to play, and I was talking to one of the Notre Dame kids, and because he was going through a similar thing as to, you know, he first started off where he was an edge guy, and now he's gained weight, and now he's kind of, you know, he's inside. Now, I didn't start on the edge. Mine was the opposite. But, you know, for me, being in the interior, like, where it's just a very reactionary thing. Like, you can almost play the position if you really have it down to a science. You can almost play blindfolded, because it's like a feel thing, right? Like, you know where you're lined up. You know you're in a 2 technique or a 3 technique, but things happen so fast down there that you're just reacting. Like, okay, down block's coming. Okay, I got to know where I feel the offensive tackle's head in front of my head, or kind of, you know, behind my hip or whatever. Like, that's going to just dictate if I'm playing behind the block or if I'm going to play in front. If I'm flipping my hips, or am I just kind of leaning and ripping? You know, like, and when you get outside and you're playing, there's just so much more time, right? Like, there's just, before you engage, like when you're in that, you know, that wide 5 or whatever, or wide 9, like, it's just like, you know, it's almost like a second before you have contact, you know, with the offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do in all this time, you know, like, but it's different. So I kind of, I prefer where it's happening fast. So, you know, that was the thing that was hard for me to get used to a little bit. Actually, the adjustment was all right. It was just when I did it in the NFL, I mean, I went from inside to outside, and I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I think I would love to be somewhere from like a 3 technique, 4-eye, and all the way just down to like a 0.
That's funny because you say 4-eye, and I mean that's got to be in my opinion, unless you're a Jason Peter or a Justin Smith or somebody like that's the toughest. That's the toughest number in my opinion to play in along the D line is in a 4.
No, I hate 4-eyes, but
I was just surprised to hear you say it.
Like, yeah, I hate it. I think you are automatically like you're giving up this leverage, right, to this
massive tackle.
You're kind of lined up inside. He's got an easy path right down on you. The way that we always did it at Nebraska was you had your interior hand down, right, in your stance. So we're from the right side of the ball. We got our left hand down, and we're stepping with our left foot. And, if we're on the left side of the football, then we got right hand down, and we're stepping first with our right foot. Well, when you're in a 4-eye, right, and so you're already stepping inside, right, somewhat, like a 45-degree angle. So it makes that really tough. And, you're so close to the offensive tackle. If the guard tries pulling out of there or something, you're just really stuck on that 4-eye. Now, we didn't play a ton of it, so we probably didn't practice it as much as, maybe they do now.
Yeah.
But that was always the technique that I was not crazy about, was the 4-eyes. Now, if you're going, like if you got some sort of 4-eye and you're able to hit it inside and just kind of, hopefully that guard, is pulling across the ball or something like that, you can make some plays pretty good there. But yeah, that as far as the techniques that we played, I was never crazy. And we didn't play a ton of it here at Nebraska. When I got to the NFL, playing the kind of the tapers 3-4, there was a lot of 4-eye.
We're talking with Jason Peter, former Husker, and as he mentioned, 3-time national champion. Can't leave that out. Jason, I wonder this a lot with, guys that I talk to other than my co-host DB here, that, you hear sometimes with Nebraska fans that they don't feel like Nebraska can ever return to a level where they compete for national titles. And as you kind of watch, I know that you still pay attention to the program, but maybe aren't as in the day-to-day as like DB is, for instance. When you look at this team, whether it's under Coach Rule or just the program in general, is there anything about it that you think like, yeah, I don't know if they can do what Notre Dame is doing, or I don't know if they can do what Michigan did last year?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see any reason why Nebraska would not be able to be successful. Let's call it what it is too. I mean, you see in it this year, especially it's starting to show itself actually the last 2 years. Now that everybody can pay their players, right? Like it's not just the SEC giving out, bags of McDonald bags full of cash and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, wow. You're starting to see like SEC is they're just like everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, but shoot, when you're the only conference that's paying, the kids, majority, I mean, I think when you look at the majority of it, that's how it had been for so long. You hear these stories like Mark Ingram and Bates, or the Johnny Manziel and all this, and obviously those are some of the elite players. But I'm pretty sure that the majority of those guys were getting something, down there for all those years that SEC was winning championships, and now it's the playing field's kind of leveled. Obviously, it's the two big power conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC, but yeah, I absolutely think that Nebraska. I mean, why not? You got great facilities. I think part of the issue is you've got to do a really good job of creating that dog in the player, right? Like the one that he just wants to win, right? Because he shows up here on campus and, DB, like, I know the game, like, there are elements of especially around the game and all the things that happen, obviously with NIL now and all this and transfer stuff, but like you got to make sure that you're finding kids, number one, that are not going to be, and this is partly looking at the parents, that they're not going to be chasing, every extra $50,000. Like if you got to worry about this kid constantly leaving after every year because, his buddy or his dad or whoever, found another school that was willing to give him a little bit more money. Like in the end, like, and I would tell these guys this all the time. Like I'd tell Ty Robinson, I'd tell Nash, I'd be like, we are not chasing this money. This is not the money that we are after. Obviously, it's great to get some, right? It's great to have a little security in your back pocket. But the money that we are chasing, that comes from those three letters, NFL, right? That's what we're going after, right? And think about every time you change or you leave schools, right? Like you got to learn a whole new offense, a whole new defense. You got to learn, you got to meet new players. You got to know how does this new staff work? What are the things that they do that are different than, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot that goes into it. Like why would you not just be comfortable at the place where you are if the money's all somewhat, similar? I understand some guys that, they're getting paid, $1 million to go out and play for 1 year at a school. And there's part of me that understands that. But, a lot of these, what is not. It's just trying to see who's going to give me a little bit more money than where I'm at right now. And that's the thing. You got to make sure, I think, that you're looking for good kids and kids that it's important, to them that they want to win. Winning is, we've all heard the saying, winning's not the only thing or whatever it is. Winning's not the most important thing. It's the only thing, something.
Yeah.
But, that's the truth. And I think here at Nebraska, you also, you fight this thing where the kids show up and they're already stars before they've done anything, right? Like everybody knows who they are. Everybody's following them on their accounts and, all this stuff. And like, you have to get back to something that resembles, you got to earn everything that you get, right? Like you have to earn it. And if it's just given to you, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like how much are you willing to fight for it? Like whether it's a position, whether it's where your team's doing, in week 6 or week 7, like you got to create, there's got to be dogs in that room. And, it can't just be guys that think that they're little mini NFL players, and they're this and they're that, and I won't do that, or I won't do this. And, hey, just look at it like you're in a glorified high school, right? And you're just lucky enough to come during a time of college football where you're getting paid a good amount of money to do it. Like at some point they're going to have to reel it in, right? Like this is not sustainable for them to be paying guys $10.5 million, right? And then possibly get no return out of it, right? Like how many programs have guys like that are just willing to give that kind of money year after year after year after year? And I'm not really sure what exactly they're getting back in return.
I know you like the kind of the leadership and that dog mentality to be closer to the ball, right? Usually the closer to the ball it is, the more it permeates your team. But man, do you think it seems like defense, especially defensively with the offensive rules and RPOs and letting linemen get downfield and stuff? I saw Notre Dame do it. I saw Texas slow down, Ohio State with it. Like disguising and being multiple is like a thing that I think we undersell. Where do you come out with like know-how and being coached versus like just overall talent?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you got to know, excuse me, which way is up, in terms of the stuff that you're running out there. And, hold on. DB, ask me that question again.
So, just the complexity of being able to do multiple things like on the back half to slow some of this offensive game down.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't you think that? I mean, it's similar as to like running the option. You know how we created, or Coach Osborne did, and you know, like these other teams that we were playing, there was just so much more information that you had to be an expert at, pretty much. Like you had to know everything was so responsibility driven.
Yeah.
You know, like there's an element, like, and I think I kind of, when I was helping Scott down there, and I would see like the work, you know, with the defensive linemen, and you know, I was always someone who just believed if you have great technique, right? Like if you play, it doesn't matter whether you're in a 3 or a 2 or a shade or a 1 or whatever. If you play with great technique, you can find your way to the football, right? Like what they're doing against you. You know, and now I know there's some misdirection stuff, the fake pull, you know, and sometimes you're just not going to make a play. But I think for the most part, if you focus and you really try to improve your technique, you'll always have a chance. Like no matter what the offense is running, no matter what the offensive line is doing up front, most of the time, whatever they're doing, if you're just playing great technique, you will find your way to the football. I don't think it, you know, like sometimes now I think we look for cheat codes, right? Like this is going to be the quickest way to the ball. And you know, I know now, you know, offset back this way, well, the chances of them running it back across the ball are going to be, you know, this percentage or that percentage. And it seems like it is a lot of percentages now. But there is, you know, and I get it. That's, I guess, how the game maybe is evolving is, you know, they start to develop these cheat codes. But I don't know. I think at some point, if you're relying on that, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point, too. But I just think, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the man,
Yeah.
Jason Peter. Jason, we appreciate the time. You'll have to come hang out with us this fall. Maybe we'll hang out on the radio show a little bit.
Yeah. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Any free time, man. We got you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Appreciate it.
That's Jason Peter, former Husker. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by our friends at Centris Federal Credit Union. If you're looking to buy a home in 2025, whether it's your first home, your dream home, or just refinancing your current mortgage, Centris has the experts and the programs to help you out. Go to centrisfcu.org to contact one of their mortgage experts. They're federally insured by NCUA, equal housing lender. All offers subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions do apply. That's centrisfcu.org. DB, we were kind of getting into something before we talked to Jason there, which is appreciate him joining us. Really good stuff. But kind of about this idea of like maximizing a roster and what you have available versus going for the upside, right? Because I think Nebraska football this year and weirdly Creighton basketball this year both sort of are having to make some of those decisions. You brought it up with the young guys with Nebraska, especially in their secondary, right? There's a lot of guys in that secondary that Nebraska coaches.
The position group that everybody's panicking over now because of the competition?
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. Like, I don't understand why people are panicking. There's going to be a lot of good players in the room. The best ones are going to play. The next best ones are going to stay, and the rest are probably going to go.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Like, get used to it. I know it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. That's how college football works now.
Would you change the – I don't even want to get you off your
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say, would you change the format of spring ball?
To, like, ensure competition and figure out who's good? Probably. I would have that in mind while I was designing what we were going to do. I think it would have to be a lot more competitive as opposed to, we're just trying to develop, we're trying to get better. There's a certain point, and maybe Nebraska's not quite there yet at all position groups, but probably are with the secondary, where it goes from, hey, this is strictly a developmental period to, hey, this is kind of a mini camp where we're weeding people out. Like, that probably is where it is going to have to go when you get to a certain talent level, right? And like I said, not sure if Nebraska's there yet everywhere, but they probably are at a couple places. I bet they're there at wide receiver. There's a lot of guys in that room. Some are young, some are old, some are proven, some are not. There's going to be there's going to be some decisions made after spring with wide receiver and secondary.
100%.
I feel pretty confident about that. Everywhere else, you're probably not quite there yet. In the sense of, I mean, we know quarterback is what it is. The defensive and offensive lines, I imagine everybody's going to just be developing, and there's enough spots and snaps for guys on both sides of the line to play.
I do think there's something he hit on that is incredibly accurate, where he talked about JP talked about not necessarily maximizing the roster, but along that sentiment of like competitive winners.
Yeah.
Like finding competitive winners.
You know, that's so hard to do. Like to identify those guys without spending a ton of time with them.
Well, he touched on something without really getting into it, though. And he's like, hey, I'm kind of speaking more to the parents. Like, I think there's definitely something about that where it can be instilled about competitive stamina, even though you're highly thought of.
Sure.
Right? Because we talk about this all, not me and you, but we just had this conversation yesterday in the household about winter conditioning goals and long-term kind of being dialed in. And you know, one of his responses to me about like being the best version of himself every day was something that I'm like, okay. It sounded, he probably thought this was corny when he's like 8 or 9, because I used to always say, and I say it all the time, every time you step on the court, the field, whatever, like you have to leave your imprint on that thing. Like don't assume somebody else knows your coded DNA. Like you don't. Like you have to make sure you leave a fingerprint. Like leave a fingerprint so they know who the suspect was. Leave a fingerprint so they know who the suspect was. Right. And just to kind of hear that regurgitated in a capacity is something that I think that winning cultures do all the time. For a guy for as good a player as Caleb Downs is, listen to him talk about his competitive nature, like why it's important for him to know that everybody out there, as he would say, feels him. No, I want them to feel me. You know, whether it's my guys on my side, I want them to feel me. You know, my vibe, how I'm practicing. If it's the offensive, the other team, I want them to feel my presence. Like because you've been around those guys and gals that just practice to get through it.
Yeah, they just practice because you have to practice.
And sometimes you get duped into this false sense of security, where like if you feel like, oh man, I was kind of tired today, I feel like I put in a good day's work, and it's like relative to what?
You know what I think it is with
and
practice?
You always have to ask it relative to what?
Yeah, like what's the benchmark? One of the things that drives me crazy about practice,
because some people are misled by that.
Yeah, I think some people are misled, but it's like, oh, hey, I checked off all the boxes in practice today. I must have gotten better.
Yeah.
Just because you complete the test doesn't mean you passed.
Right.
And so I think you're right. And I do think that's one of the, and I wouldn't put it, I want to be careful here because I don't know the guys in the room. So I don't want to put something on them that may or may not be true.
I need some lotion.
I don't want to say that some of the guys in Nebraska secondary this year weren't competitive enough. I do think there probably wasn't enough of the mentality about they have to feel my imprint, right? Like if I'm going to be critical,
you can take that line. I haven't used it. Nobody else has said that except for me, so you can take it.
If I'm going to be,
you want to make sure it's like this. You want to make sure they know who the suspect is.
Yeah.
Leave your fingerprint.
And if I have to have a criticism, if I have a criticism of like two of the maligned guys from the secondary, Singleton and Gifford this year, I don't felt like they had that mindset enough of the, hey, I want them to know that I'm the suspect, right? Caleb Downs has that. And I get Caleb Downs is freakishly talented as well.
But that's not, I'm just, when you watch, this is going to sound crazy. So hang in here with me.
You don't think he's that much more talented than those guys?
No.
That's fair.
What
did the rule say about Singleton a year and a half ago?
When you watch Caleb Downs play, do you immediately think
freak?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No. But one thing you do think, the guy's everywhere.
Yeah, my God, he's there again.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, there's not enough guys in Nebraska, and I picked on those two guys, but there's not enough guys on Nebraska's team in general last year that said, hey, I want them to know I'm the suspect. Like, that was the thing. That was, to me, the difference between most of the year Jamal Banks and after Holgorsen took over Jamal Banks. After Holgorsen took over, felt like Jamal Banks wanted people to know he was the suspect, right?
Yeah.
Emmett Johnson always wanted people to know that he was the suspect. I don't just think he didn't get the run before that, right? There's not enough guys on Nebraska right now. Like, they may think they're competitive, but do they want people to know, hey, I'm the suspect. It was me. Like, go check the fingerprints. Like, that's the thing that I don't know that they have right now. And that's what I think you're going to find out in spring.
Like, watch Schuler from Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8. Watch that guy.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Yeah. X is the same way.
He's a 6 foot,
you think there's
198 pounder.
You think there's a single play where Watts isn't thinking, like, they're going to feel me here?
Yeah.
Because listen, and Watts, really talented guy.
That's kind of cheating because, like, I just know his competitive stamina.
No, I know, but I don't know anything about him.
Is really, really high.
I don't know anything about him, and we haven't talked about Watts very much.
Yeah.
I know very little about X, right? What I do know is that talented guy, probably not on the freak scale. Is that fair?
Yeah.
But was the best defensive back in the country last year. His name is constantly being called this year because it seems like there is this undeniable, like, drive in him to be felt on every play.
I wonder, like, so it's just interesting because sometimes these guys, I was listening to the broadcast talk about Carnell Lake's son, and kind of what made him good. And at no point did they talk about measurables that jumped off the screen. They talked about toughness, his football savvy, and his football acumen. Can do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking to myself, how does a guy like that make himself known? Right? Because you don't know that.
Yeah.
Going in, like it has to, and so not everybody.
That's why I say
has
it's so hard to find.
Well, not everybody has the opportunity or gets the grace long enough where you find those people either. So there has to be this combination of a mentality from your staff where that's still what we're about, and we're not always about the ready-made.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play the long game too, so sometimes it's on the evaluators too.
Yeah,
they got to allow themselves some patience.
It's a long eval. To find those guys, it's a much longer eval than it is to just find the freaks. Because, I mean, any idiot with a computer can find the freaks. Like, that's not hard.
And everybody wants them.
That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, wrapping up hour number 2, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. DB, as we're having that conversation about like talent versus competitive stamina and all these things, kind of the dirty little secret, right, about the NFL. And we were talking about a guy that showed out last night, Jared Verse, right? Kind of the dirty little secret about the NFL is the best guys generally aren't the freaks.
It does seem like that.
Like, and I don't think that's just anecdotal because I'm a big NFL combine and draft nerd. Like, I love the combine.
Yeah, right.
So I know the measurables. I know those guys. Yeah. And then you see who gets drafted. And then you see who ends up being good. And it's generally not the freaks. That's why the Raiders have been so bad at drafting for 20 years. Right? Like, sorry, not to like hit any strays over here.
Why you got to bring up old stuff?
I mean, I'm bringing up pretty relevant stuff. Like
our current stuff.
To this day. That's just why am I bringing up stuff? But you look at a guy like Jared Verse, right? And if that guy was a freak, he probably doesn't start off at Albany.
Right.
Right? If he's Williams and Winery, right? He doesn't start off at Albany if he's built like that, right? Like, that's fair. You look at that guy and you go, okay, he's kind of just like he's got a good frame, but he doesn't have he's not Jadeveon Clowney, right? You don't look at that dude and you're just like, oh my God, look at those measurables. But you watch him play football and you go, oh my God, look at that guy. And he was like that at Albany. He was like that the minute he showed up at Florida State, and he was like that the minute he showed up in LA.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Although you can have some freaks that take the long way around. Like
sure,
like Mac was a freak, and he started at Buffalo.
Yeah, he was Buffalo the whole time, right?
I mean, so,
and I totally get that. Late bloomer, right? Maybe grows into his body a little bit. And don't get me wrong, like Jared Verse is fast. Like I think he ran like just about a 4.6.
That's
in the comic somewhere in there, but that's not like there's other guys that run that. That's not. It's good. It's not freaky.
I know what you're trying to say without
And a lot of the defensive backs are like that too, which is a position where we tend to put a premium on freakiness. But you go and you look at. I mean, Richard Sherman's the best example of this, right? What that dude run? I mean, I think he was slower than Jared Verse coming out of Stanford.
You know what's interesting is there's a lot of guys, and I know you guys do. I don't know. I assume you guys are like me, where you'll watch games with guys in the secondary sometimes, and you'll say, how do they cover those guys?
Yeah.
Like, if you just look at their individual skill sets, you're like,
yeah, how is that guy not always open? Or how are there not guys just running open all the time?
Or I'll give you the one to the opposite. Like, how does Puka Nacua
ever get open? I've thought that about Puka Nacua. I thought that about I think that about Cooper Kupp. I think that I'm not just doing the white guys here. I thought that about Wes Welker. But there's a lot of guys like that.
They just happen to be all
of
lighter pigmentation.
Puka's not white.
I mean, Tyler Higbee, I'm pretty sure the Vikings weren't sure he was playing last night until he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I know you wonder how Kelsey gets open.
Oh, 100%.
I watched, I was going to say Wesley Walls, but because I saw him up close and personal in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Just make catch after catch. I'm like, how? I watched Jason Witten. How?
Yeah. Well, how does that do? Oh, who was the other Carolina receiver? Probably the best receiver they've ever had.
Steve Smith?
Yeah, Steve Smith. How's Steve Smith open all the time?
So that's his just ask Steve Smith too. Like, that's kind of his calling card. He was, I'm not the biggest, I'm not the fastest, I wasn't the greatest route runner.
Yeah.
But you know what he does, and he'll tell you, and I think sometimes he's just closet crazy, not like as crazy as we think, even though does have a quick temper. He likes practicing more than almost anybody he plays against, so that was kind of his secret weapon.
Competitive stamina.
Yeah.
Right? But like Steve Smith, that dude should never get open in the NFL. Right? Never.
I understand.
And then what does he do his entire career? Even like Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden was a big guy. He wasn't like particularly explosive. Who?
Hines Ward.
Oh, great example. 100%. How's Hines Ward ever open in the NFL? Right? But there's a lot of things that matter, whether it's and to Jason Peters' point, if you've got your technique down, I know he was talking specifically about interior D linemen, right? But I'll blanket statement this thing. If you've got your technique down, you give yourself a chance.
Well, I'll give you a couple.
Yeah.
I watch him every week. Now, one has a much better quarterback that he's playing with, but he didn't used to when he was on the left coast. It's Keenan Allen. And, I mean, how good is Mike Evans?
Mike Evans is unbelievable. Listen, I've been on the Mike Evans thing since A&M.
Oh, I know. This dude comes in. I asked him about if you'd seen Johnny Manziel was just on another pod, and he was talking
I think it was Club Shay Shay, wasn't it?
No, it was a little before that.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, Manziel, he just kind of spills all the tea, right? Just what he would do differently and this, that, and the other. And you go, hey, you ever watch those guys? You ever watch him when he was playing? Are we sure Mike Evans wasn't the best player on that team?
And
like you say that every time I bring up Texas A&M,
because nobody remembers it.
You bring up, you're probably 6 for 6 bringing up
100, and I'll be 100 for 100 the rest of my life, because that dude is the reason Johnny Manziel won a Heisman. You know how many YOLO balls Johnny Manziel just tossed up after scrambling around hungover for 10 seconds, and then Mike Evans is like, "Don't worry, I got you, boo."
I mean, some of those balls that he was catching from Baker Mayfield the other night.
Yeah, well, there's no business.
They're just such
and you know the low key
tight little window.
The low key one was that slant in the end zone where
I don't even know how he saw it.
He could not have seen that ball until it was right here.
I don't even know how he saw it.
First of all,
and Baker put that thing on a line.
The decision to throw that ball is wild.
Well, because he had the defender's back.
He had his back, so he could just put it over his shoulder, right? Yeah. But like, that's a throw Sam Darnold's not going to pull the trigger on. Right?
Yeah.
That's what the difference we were talking about between Sam Darnold and a Baker Mayfield, or a Sam Darnold and a Matt Stafford, is Baker Mayfield is never going to be afraid to throw that ball if a guy's not 100% open. Right?
And by the way, Jason's been hammering technique for like 15 years.
Yeah.
That's his big thing.
Even for an uber talented guy. He's a great technician.
But also undersized.
Because and also, I mean, we had guys that were probably more talented that couldn't figure it out because they wouldn't do it there a certain way.
Yeah. There's a ton of super talented guys that never figure it out because A, they don't have the competitive stamina, B, they don't love practice, or C, they never commit to the technique, right? And all those three things probably go hand in hand, right? If you've got the competitive stamina, then you're going to love practice. And if you love practice, you'll probably learn the technique.
I remember Darryl Green was the speaker at the rookie symposium, and he talked about, even though, he's a fast guy, he was undersized, and he goes, the thing that keeps you in the league longer than anything, and almost anybody will say this, I don't care what ethnicity, what position, they talk about fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like fundamental, talent gets you in, fundamentals keep you.
Yeah, there's obviously a bare minimum level of talent you have to have, otherwise you don't have a shot, right? Like that's a given. But once you get that, the degrees between the minimum entry level of talent and the high-end talent probably don't correlate to success as much as the fundamentals, the work ethic, the practice habits, the competitive stamina.
Yeah, you know what? You want round? Quentin Lake was taken in.
What round?
Their nickel starter that can play 6 positions.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
6.
I was gonna say 5. Yeah,
six round.
Yeah.
Quentin
How many good wide receivers do people find?
You just kind of see that more and more.
All the time. All the time. I mean, look at running backs, right?
Hey.
We love running backs. I'm the one that's saying the running back resurgence should be here. Pay Saquon, not Jordan Love. That's me. Right? That's the train I've been on.
You know what you'll never say? Pay James Cook and not Josh Allen.
No, Josh Allen's good at football. But
I love how we go back and forth. And I think we've landed on that he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's probably a little more turnover prone than I'd like, but he's really good.
Josh Allen was pretty maligned for a while.
Can both those things be true, though?
And I'm going to be like, you know what Josh Allen's biggest problem is? He ran into goddamn Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes exists at the exact same time as him. That's his biggest problem.
That's going to be his problem.
You know how many
And that's not to say he wasn't a little careless with the football, but I mean, he did what they asked him to do. And anytime you're that quarterback centric, the ball is gonna find its way to the other team's hands.
Yeah, we've seen that at Nebraska a lot over the last 10 years.
Why are you bringing up old stuff?
I'm just, no, but like he can be a little turnover prone and be awesome. Like those things can coexist.
Yeah, he was incredible this year. I know that.
And
you can't name 3 of his receivers, not name Coleman. And Shakur's been banged up.
Yeah.
I mean, we get the barefoot guy that
weirdo.
I don't understand that.
I don't either.
But I mean, whatever. Who was he this week? Was he Fred Flint? Was he the grandpa? He was like the thing where they wear the blue hat at the meetings and flip the Flintstones.
Yeah,
I think he was like he had that costume on.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. That guy's out there. He's doing some other stuff.
Kincaid is nice.
Wasn't it like the Water Buffaloes or something like that?
His meetings.
Yeah.
Fred.
I wasn't a big Flintstones guy.
Me neither.
It didn't like overlap with my interests, and I don't know.
I didn't watch any cartoons that outside of Bugs Bunny that didn't have like some
violence
hero. Yeah. Thundercats, He-Man, Super Friends.
You wanted
Thunder.
You wanted the violence.
I don't know.
You just don't like it when I put it like that.
Yeah, because you painted me
Thundar
as this
was
guy
super underrated.
Also, a series that I can watch.
I didn't paint you as this guy. You love sharks. You love great whites. You love serial killers, and you love violent cartoons
and orcas.
No wonder you turned out how you did.
Soft as a batch of cookies.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back with Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR Lincoln, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. I'm here to remind you, as we wait for our friend Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7, that you still have a few days left to get out to Midlands Family Urgent Care. It's not too late to start your New Year's resolution and get a little kickstart from Midlands Family Urgent Care with their GLP-1 specials. You got tirzepatide or semaglutide that you can get for 3 months at a huge discount. Both FDA-approved options to help you lose weight safely and effectively. Call the Millard location, 402-810-9494. That's Midlands Family Urgent Care. DB.
What's up?
Mike's here, by the way.
Oh, well, I guess we're just going to talk to Mike now.
We have Mike J.
Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. What's up, Schaefer?
Oh, just, doing a Viking funeral to the Viking season. So if you guys have any items you'd like to see burned, let me know.
You got
in the backyard.
Hey, burning the boat and sending it off into the
pretty much.
I typically make fun of people that, like when misery loves company. But coming from a guy that is this weekend had to learn to, by about Sunday at 10 o'clock, a.m., I had learned to laugh at every AI Mike Tomlin bit, every Russell Wilson meme, At some point, I just chuckled to myself, and I was like, you know what? That's pretty funny. I didn't get mad again, Schaefer, until yesterday morning when the Steelers were on every talking head show in some capacity. Like, they're this relevant football, they're the defending Super Bowl champs that have been knocked out or something, right? Like, they garner more headlines for an average football team than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just sort of, we're going to get like a couple days worth of Sam Darnold conversation to fill the network air and everything else. And then you'll get the people that were like, this is the guy we always said he was. And you'll get the people that 15 days ago he lit up the Packers. I mean, it's just sports.
Jave, so I should not ask you
the conversation.
McCarthy right now?
No. You can ask me. What I think they're going to end up doing is
your tweet real time was kind of funny.
Well, which one?
The Daniel Jones era.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they cut to him on the sidelines. Did anyone look more like a real life action figure than Daniel Jones?
Nope. Total cartoon character.
He looks like a 1980s G.I. Joe. Like, it is incredible to me. I'm sure he probably has the same flexibility as a 1980s G.I. Joe, but it's going to be Daniel Jones and J.J. McCarthy next year, and we'll see if that can get them back to the playoffs. They're in a weird spot. Like, they're an older roster. They don't really start any of their own internal players on defense. It's kind of a group of older veteran free agents. And, this was an out of nowhere season, and I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought they were better than kind of the last 2 weeks, but that's their resume. And they have 4 losses, and they came to the same 2 teams, and the last 2 games weren't even relatively close. So that's the end of the year.
So you just don't think they bring Darnold back in any way, shape, or form?
I think if you could, if he has tarnished his value so much that you can get him to sign like a $25 million annual value kind of contract, I think you'd certainly be interested in doing it. I think and I have become, almost president of his fan club, but I don't think he's quite as good as Baker Mayfield. And so maybe that's kind of the cutoff. I would rather have Baker Mayfield than Sam Darnold. And so, and Baker Mayfield's on an incredible contract for the Bucs, which allows him to be able to do a bunch of stuff and then still get what I think to be really good quarterback play. I just don't know if you can get Sam Darnold for that amount of money, maybe you consider doing it, because I think your offense I think you can work with that. I think you can try to figure out what happened in the last 2 weeks of the season. It's not just Darnold. The offensive line did not play well enough. Kevin O'Connell's game plans did not help, or he wasn't able to move off of some stuff quick enough. And yet at the same time, I mean, Darnold flatlined in 2 critical games. So it'd be a really tough decision. And you've got a guy in J.J. McCarthy who you believe is the future. So you probably want to at least see what that is while he's on a rookie contract.
This is interesting because you talked about the Vikings and their age. I'm going to give you the top 13 teams, Schaefer. And I cut it off at 13, even though the Commanders' average age is 28. But the Minnesota Vikings is 28 on the dot. So just no extra months. Mm-hmm. So in reverse order, this is how closely connected you and I are, Mike J. Vikings, Steelers, the Bills, the Eagles, the Lions, the Texans, the Ravens, the Chiefs, Tampa Bay, the Rams, the Broncos, and the youngest is the Packers. I'm going to say this again. What do two of the top 13 not have in common with everybody else? Ready, Schaefer? I'll give it to you again. This time, top to bottom. Packers, Broncos, Rams, Buccaneers, Chargers, Chiefs, Ravens, Texans, Lions, Eagles, Bills, Steelers, Vikings. Who are the 2 outliers, and what is the outlier? Everybody else has
I feel like I need to be looking at the lists, what
is it?
Everybody else has a quarterback on a long-term deal.
Yep, has their quarterback
besides Steelers and
the Vikings.
Well, technically, the Vikings have J.J. McCarthy in a long-term deal, but
sure.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like a proven. Everybody
a guy that's at least played.
Everybody has their guy, except those two.
You could argue the Broncos are early with Knicks,
yeah,
but he played all year.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
He's not going anywhere.
But that's the closest one to the situation with the Vikings.
Isn't that crazy? That makes me sad, Mike J.
But part of that is, to be fair, to not make you sad, part of that is you almost have to go young when you're paying a quarterback because you can't afford to keep the veterans at other spots.
Do you like your assets, Schaefer?
Like me personally in life?
Like to
like, are you comfortable with your net worth right now?
My net worth could stand to improve, guys.
The Vikings.
I mean, I think they have a incredible group of skill position players without even having like a great running back. I think Aaron Jones is good, but I don't. One of my takeaways from the last month of the season is I don't necessarily need Aaron Jones to return to Minnesota. Not that he doesn't have value, but I don't trust you're going to get the guy that you had in September, in December, and January, because I don't think he can hold up. I think he's kind of can only play half the season, and you'd rather have them back half than the front half. And then defensively, they don't really have assets. They have Cam Bynum, who's pretty good. And then a bunch of free agents that they've plugged and played and have done really well for Brian Flores, but they've missed on a ton of draft picks defensively. They have missed on a lot of offensive linemen that aren't Christian Darrisaw or Brian O'Neill. And so they've got two great tackles, the best wide receiver in football, a really, really great complementary wide receiver in Jordan Addison, a top 5 tight end in Hawkinson. So they have like really good pieces on the offensive side. They need a quarterback that they believe in long term. They need to figure out the entire defense in a way because I just don't know. Other than Jonathan Grenard, you don't have a lot of those guys signed up long term. Like they're sort of a mercenary team. You got Jonathan Grenard and Harrison Phillips, I think, are long term on your defense, and then everything else is pretty tenuous.
So, Schaefer, we were kind of having this conversation earlier in the show.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
It's almost criminal that Patrick Mahomes has the 6th youngest roster in football.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I definitely noticed, and I was like, oh, that bums me out.
I mean, we just going to gloss over the fact that Mahomes, at the average age of his team is 26 years old.
And they were like 15-2 this year? Yep. Nope, that's definitely the thing that I thought.
It's encouraging.
Definitely wasn't like, oh, God, yeah, nobody's ever going to win a Super Bowl again besides him.
You can dislike the Chiefs.
Schaefer, we were having this conversation earlier about maximizing a roster versus taking a risk reward on somebody that you're not sure on yet. You're kind of in that spot with J.J. McCarthy versus bringing in another bridge guy or signing Sam Darnold. Nebraska's kind of been in that spot with certain positions over the last year or so. Like, where do you land on that if you're thinking, hey, I can get to this level? For Nebraska, I think it was, hey, I can get to a bowl game.
And this is on the heels of his great that segment last week, Schaefer. You said there was a lot in there.
Yeah, like you can say, hey, I can get to a bowl game playing some of the older guys. I'm going to ride with the guys I know versus, hey, maybe we could have got to 8 wins had we played some of the younger guys, but we also maybe could have missed the bowl game. Like, how do you start to weigh that, whether it's with the Vikings or whether it's Nebraska, that you start to go, hey, at some point I have to go for the big reward rather than minimize the risk?
I think you have to have a really strong understanding of what your foundation is, and like with the Minnesota Vikings, their foundation is their offense. It's Justin Jefferson and it's that passing game. So if you went out and you got a dink and dunk quarterback that can't put the ball 15 yards downfield with any accuracy, you'd be wasting, what you have. So you have to figure out your foundation. What do we think Nebraska's foundation is on this roster right now? Because we can't say it's the passing game because we really don't know what any of these wide receivers that you've swapped in are at this point in time. We thought it was a passing game coming into the season, and that disappeared when the schedule got a little bit tougher and you got into Big Ten play. Do we know what Nebraska's foundation is? Sorry.
Did you say quarterback?
I think quarterback's a big part of it.
you're going to have to make it something, right? So I think it's whatever the designation is. And I think they're going to say quarterback.
Well, and I think that's probably the right idea because you've identified that as maybe your most talented player or the player that is most important to getting you to where you want to go. So I think that makes sense. And so what have they done this offseason? They went out and they changed out wide receivers. It seemed very apparent to me that Dana Holgorsen was not happy enough with his wide receiver room that he has inherited. And he went out and he got a wide receivers coach that he trusts. And they went and they got wide receivers that they think can help in this offense in the immediacy. And even a guy like Hardley Gilmore, the fourth, isn't just hey, we're going to go grab someone to have for a couple years and see what he can do. I think this was a really important get for them because it again, they want to build up that wide receiver room from where they're at. If they're a team that's going to rely on Dylan Raiola's arm, he has to have people to be able to throw the ball to. And so I think that's really important. Defensively, if the foundation, and I think with Matt Rule, it always starts up front with your defensive line, and then how do you build off of that? Well, they've added behind some of their starters or presumed starters on their defensive line. They added some more bodies, and then they've kind of found different plug-and-play players defensively with what they brought in. I mean, we don't know 100% who is going to start at corner or who's going to start at safety at this point in time, but they've given themselves a lot of options, which I think is sort of important. But a lot of it is you have to figure out what your foundation is, and then you have to kind of decide, like, is this enough? Can we, what type of team are we here? Are we going to have to grind out to get the 6 wins? I don't think they felt like they had that team last year. I think they felt like they had a team that could win 9 or 10 games. And they did.
On the heels of last week, and still along these lines, I can't remember the exact term used. It was either stunting or stymieing the growth, right? Because as a developmental program, there still has to be that piece when you compliment guys. And we talk about how careful Nebraska was being with guys that they brought in that are still kind of developmental guys. Where is if you're going to put in another important puzzle piece, where is the day-to-day competition slice of that pie that you're trying to put together for this developmental chart? Like, how important is the day-to-day competitiveness for you if you're still not wanting to, stunt growth? I think you said stunt growth.
Well, I think it's huge. I think part of why you go get a Gabe Moore and, the kid from East Tennessee who's Jalen George. I think it's Jalen George. There's so many new names. Like it's you kind of have to, off of memory, it's kind of hard to recall everything. But you go get those 2 guys because what are they going to do? They're competing with Keona Davis. They're competing with Cam Lenhart. They're competing with Elijah Judy. They're competing with Williams Winery. Like all of those guys are competing for a couple spots on either side of Riley Van Poppel or whoever's going to be in the middle of that defensive line. Like if you're building up your roster, you need competition for Keona Davis. Like Keona Davis had a really nice freshman year and that he got his feet wet and he got to play. You can't just be like, all right, now the job's yours, kid. And there's nobody that's going to be pushing them or you have no fail safe. So I think daily competition is huge. I think we're seeing that with a lot of what they brought in terms of guys that maybe have more years of playing. Justin Rhett was brought in to compete in the defensive back room. Andrew Marshall and Amir Khan are brought in to compete with your cornerback spot, whether that's Donovan Jones competing with those guys, Bly Hill, if Mario Buford is or Marquise Buford are moving back to safety. So I think what they've done specifically on defense more than on offense is they have that daily competition that Damon was talking about. They brought in a bunch of guys that all have the ability to play, and they want to see if the cream can rise. Like I think that's sort of where we're at, right? Like otherwise, I don't think they brought in a bunch of people that are unquestioned starters on the defensive side of the ball. I think they brought in people to compete with players they already like that are younger, that maybe don't have a ton of experience, that you can't just hand the job to, but need to sort of earn it as well. Like that's what I've seen on the defensive side. Maybe I'm just completely missing, whatever it is that they're doing. But to me, they're really reinforcing this idea that you earn your job through practice. You earn your job through repetition. You earn your spot on the field on game day by beating out the people around you. And if you don't succeed in game, there's someone that's going to be there to take it because the competition is going to be strong, week in and week out.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Schaefer, how much of that do you think has to do with the fact that they are losing some kind of more proven guys, whether it's up front with Nash and Ty or in the back end with guys like Gifford, where you kind of thought going in, okay, this guy is sort of an unquestioned starter, versus the kind of makeover of the defensive staff and maybe them wanting different things than the previous defensive coaches did?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point here because you've had so many different defensive backs coaches in a short amount of time. I mean, you think about that position room, you went from Travis Fisher to Evan Cooper to John Butler to Addison Williams. They all have different opinions on the type of players that they want, different body types that they're interested in, different views on the type of guys that are better at cross training from safety to corner to safety, different, opinions on what a Malcolm Hartzog is for an Addison Williams is completely different than what he was for a Travis Fisher, is different than how John Butler saw him, is different than how Evan Cooper saw him. So when you have that many different people, I see this a lot, like, oh, Nebraska has like 28 defensive backs. Well, yeah, because you've had a lot of different cooks in the kitchen and they all want their different ingredients and they all have a different recipe that they're trying to make. And so some of it is you have to figure out what it is that works best in your defense, who's going to fit there. Some of these guys are going to compete and leave in the spring because they're going to get passed up or the opportunity isn't going to be there. And I think that is most represented by the defensive back room, maybe more than anything else. Like, I don't know that a whole lot changed with Terrence Knighton to Terry Braden, in part because we haven't heard him talk and he hasn't been as involved in terms of the player procurement. But I think a lot has changed in what you've been doing on your defensive backfield.
It's interesting. I have to have Chiefs fans. You're certainly not saying that the Nebraska fans, man, lose so we can get coach in town. But, man, you're thinking, hey, man, anytime you get
I have a question for you guys because you're both veterans of this whole process. You have thoughts on these sort of things. Does it strike you as weird that Nebraska doesn't feel like they have a completed coaching staff during one of the most critical time periods to get on the road and show your face to different programs around the country? Like, you have that picture the other day of Matt Rule with those coaches in St. Louis, and we already know your offensive coordinator isn't going to go on the road and recruit. You've hired Phil Snow, who probably isn't going to go on the road and recruit. Jamar Mosey and Keith Williams are stepping into these roles for you, but it feels so odd. Like, as someone who has covered recruiting, closely since getting hired in October of 2011, this is such a different style, and I don't know that it's right, wrong, better, worse, but it is weird that you sort of don't have a final staff, and it's January 14th.
I think because
we're still waiting on a special teams coach.
I'm in agreement. I think what it is, Schaefer, is very strategic about assigned specific roles kind of behind the scenes, right? So there are guys that have like kind of changed their roles a little bit, whether it's a Troy Vincent Jr. or you mentioned Keith Williams or Mosey or some of these guys that are kind of operating behind the scene. And it's funny because we're describing the term bridge. Like, do you get a bridge quarterback until you get your – I think Nebraska is playing to their staff's strengths until they get what they want completed. And I also think because they're pretty much, 2025 is pretty much done, they're afforded a little bit of time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I do. It's just, it's one of those where
it's weird.
And I might be wrong. I could be wrong. And this is just based off of conversations with coaches in the past. The January period always has a ton of value for kicking things forward because you're making the introduction in a lot of ways to a lot of players that you offer during their sophomore or junior seasons that you've never met in person before. And sometimes, and just, talking with some of these guys, and Marcus Satterfield has been out a lot in the last week or so, these tight ends, know nothing about Nebraska, but Marcus Satterfield is their first link into it. And so make whatever jokes you want about that. But that's a really important thing to put a picture of someone on Nebraska, because you know damn well that if you're recruiting against Clemson, Michigan, Michigan State, there is a coach that is their visual identification of that university. And when you don't have that, or when that coach isn't really going to be your coach or whatever it is harder to identify Nebraska as a real option. And so I think it matters when you're able to get on the road to get in front of as many critical players as you want to, because just spamming their DMs and their text every day doesn't create the perception of an individual or an image of what the University of Nebraska is. And the first battle that this program goes through every single time is getting someone to campus. It's really hard to get someone to campus if all you're doing is sending DMs and text messages.
Schaefer, let me get you out of here on this because we only have about 60 seconds. How far are you into Landman, and where are we before I say anything? How many episodes have you seen?
The last episode featured Jerry Jones giving a very passionate, well-written speech about the value of working with family. So I think we're through 9 episodes. And I think there's 10. So maybe there's one. Is there more than 10? I don't know.
Nope. 10 is it. And
okay. So we got one more.
Spectacular.
Shelby needs to work a lot less so we can watch it.
Where are you ranking this in your the pantheon of like Bosch and some of these other gyms that you figured out in the first season?
I like it. I'm a little worried it's going to go full Sons of Anarchy and completely off the rails, because that's sort of the Taylor Sheridan experience. But I mean, Billy Bob Thornton's incredible. So I'm in. I'm in for that alone.
The guy makes typecasting work.
Billy Bob?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was born for these
Billy
lines.
Bob.
Like, the dialogue is incredible. He delivers it perfectly. He's incredibly sardonic, sarcastic, unhappy. It's a kinship. I feel a real kinship with that.
Schaefer, who's your favorite character, real quick?
On the show, it's probably just Billy Bob at this point. I don't know that there's. His Allie Larder's nuts. That's fun.
Oh, she's certifiable, isn't she?
Yeah.
That's guy Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. We'll talk to you next week, Schaefer.
Thanks, Schaefer.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Make sure you get to warhorsecasino.com to check out all their promotions, or just go check out the casinos in Lincoln or in Omaha. Keep your money on this side of the river. Place your sports bets at Warhorse Sportsbook. DB, have you heard the news?
That the Cowboys have talked to Dion?
That is the news I was talking about.
How about that for a stab?
Also, not the most shocking thing in the world. We've sort of been hinting around this since Colorado got off to another good start and the Cowboys got off to another bad start.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you think, because I don't really know what to do with this.
Oh, boy. Where do you start?
I start with not assuming, whatever I feel about Dion personally, I'm not going to assume that he can't coach at this level, because I don't know. Right? I don't know, because I think
he's beating you right now.
Well, I still don't like him as a person.
No, I know, but he's a better coach than I think you thought.
Yes, yeah.
The results
this year were definitely better than I thought they would.
And even I wonder how. I'm like,
yeah, and I think he's done a pretty good job putting a staff together.
Yep.
I also think there's obviously something about him that resonates with players that I don't get, and I can understand that.
Now, the interesting thing will be, does he need young guys?
That's the thing I don't know, right? Because in the NFL, I don't know if his thing resonates with those guys, right? Because that's a totally different demographic, and we saw it with better coaches than him not work, right? Like Nick Saban obviously didn't resonate with NFL guys the way he does with college guys. We see it quite a bit. Here's the thing, honestly, the biggest thing is not a Dion thing that I don't know what to do with this. It's that if Jerry Jones actually makes this hire, and I don't know how serious this is or not, but if he actually makes this hire, if you go back and look at his track record of hiring coaches, I think it's way better than we realize.
It's pretty good.
Right? Like I'll give you all of them real quick, right? Starts with Jimmy Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Successful, yes.
Yeah.
Barry Switzer wins a Super Bowl. Okay, now a lot of people think it was off the tails of Johnson, but he won a lot of games. You had Chan Gailey, who was okay, not great, but he didn't have a losing season in 2 years. Here's the only bad one, Dave Campo.
Yeah, and it was quick, too.
5-11, 5-11, 5-11, gone. That's the only coach he's ever hired that has had a losing record with the Cowboys. Yeah. Parcells, Wade Phillips, who actually I think has the highest winning percentage of any of them.
If he wouldn't have burned so quick.
Yeah.
You just know both their temperaments. It's like.
But good coach.
Now, this is the thing that I wonder with Deion, because what Deion does immediately, if Jerry pulled the trigger, number one, and I don't know if this is good or bad, it takes the shine off of Jerry.
Yeah.
Like Deion immediately becomes.
It becomes about Deion.
The story.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if Jerry can handle.
Will Jerry be cool with, or at this stage in Jerry's career,
can he handle it?
Is this what he wants?
Maybe.
Because there'll be no what did Jerry say this week on his radio show.
It'll be what did Deion say.
It'll be what did Deion say.
Yeah.
So he immediately alleviates the attention.
Yeah.
But the other thing
which I think is actually good for the franchise. I don't know if Jerry can handle it.
The other thing is because Deion was like fining guys NIL money that weren't going to class.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
or they were getting bad grades or whatever.
He's like, hey, this is what happens in the league. This is how it's going to. I wonder if he'll coach
like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if you can. Like, I really don't. I don't know if you can do that at the NFL level.
Tomlin does.
And so did Belichick.
Do it. Like Jimmy Johnson used to do it.
And so did Belichick.
Belichick did.
Johnson would get his guys money.
Does Deion have the cachet to be able to do that?
I mean, Jimmy Johnson's discipline with those nutty Cowboy teams is legendary.
Yeah.
Right? It's what endeared him so much to Troy Aikman.
Because he sort of kept things under control.
Yeah.
As much as possible. It really got off the rails.
Which is why Troy didn't like Barry.
Yeah, it's really got off the rails when Switzer got there. Right? That's the accuracy of how it happens. But we tend to lump in Jimmy Johnson.
Here's the other thing,
era.
though, too, with Jimmy. You know how he shot down the radio guys a couple months ago that kind of asked negative questions. He's like, I'll find somebody else to do it. Your job isn't to challenge me. And what Deion will also do is his peers aren't going to criticize him. For whatever the reason, I mean, and you're talking about a lot of talking head shows, and it's the Dallas Cowboys. Which one of those guys is going to be the first one to say something negative about Deion?
Probably
it's going to be a slow burn.
It's going to be a long wait.
You know,
especially if there's any success early.
I mean, is Ryan Clark, who is notoriously critical of whatever,
is he going to go in on him?
I mean, is Stephen A. Smith is he going to?
So here's what I wonder:
is Dan Orlovsky probably will.
So here's what I wonder: will the NFL specific guys, which tend to be more critical, will they be harder on him than the national guys or the college football guys that tend to be a little softer?
And I apologize for lumping. The only thing Stephen A. and Ryan Clark have in common is
they both have similar jobs.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Oh, so I was thinking.
It's not what I was thinking.
Oh.
Ryan Clark actually has credibility because he played, and he's typically right more than he's wrong. Now, he may push the envelope on some other agendas, but his accuracy is pretty high.
Yeah, he knows ball. Like that's
so
unquestioned.
You know, I'll be curious. Like the Jeff Saturdays, the Orlovskys. I think Shannon Sharp would be critical.
Yeah,
if
probably.
Needed be. But it will be kid gloves for sure.
I do think so. I think the guys like Stephen A. Smith, the national kind of, I call them generalists, the guys that don't necessarily like nail down on the NFL, would be easier on him, kind of the way we saw at Colorado. But your Ryan Clarks, your Dan Orlovsky.
I mean, I could see Coward going in if need be.
Yeah, probably. But that's kind of
he was the first guy to kind of nationally stand up to Aaron Rodgers.
That's kind of Coward's deal, is he'll be hard on people that other people aren't. Yeah, now, he goes easy on people that he likes, but he'll kind of go in on people. That's sort of his thing. But I do think NFL people will be more critical than the college reception was for Deion. Like, I can just see, especially because you have a lot of analytics people in the NFL circles now.
Now, it is a very well-coached league. It is a coordinator's league.
Yeah, so he'll have to get that
He'll
right.
have to, and he's put together some decent staffs. They may not have the shelf life.
Right.
But
I even thought last year his staff at at Colorado was good.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't work out well because you had the weird thing with the offensive coordinator. And like, I get it didn't go well. But I thought the staff was pretty good. Like, I'll give him credit there. He seems to have a self-awareness of what he doesn't know.
And if in a league where you treat your quarterbacks differently by nature.
What he did with Shador doesn't matter.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered.
At all. Now, the question is, and I don't know this, is my immediate thought goes, okay, let's say they hire Dion. Is it with the understanding that they try and make a move to go get Shedeur? That's the $1 million question to me.
They don't have enough.
Well, they're at 12, and they'd have to mortgage their future.
Yeah, they don't have enough. And
as is, they
what
don't.
do you do with Dak's contract? Because nobody else is paying that.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
It seems like it's
difference make a game changer.
Kind of the going rate.
Well, Dallas is going to have to eat some of it.
Sure. But we saw that with Russell. If you're willing to eat some of it, you can get rid of a guy.
Yeah, and that was monumental.
Yeah, it was. But once it happens the first time, I think people are like, oh, I can survive this. And Dak isn't nearly as toxic as Russell was coming out of Denver.
Correct.
Like I think
there's much younger.
And there's still people that probably look at Dak and be like, oh, I can win with that. Like as is, I can win with Dak like that. Mm-hmm. There's probably teams like, okay, who's got a really good roster? Let's say you like the Jets roster still? Or Giants? You like Giants roster better?
I like the Giants roster. I like the Steelers roster.
So let's say you're the Giants, the Jets, or the Steelers.
I tell you what, Dak with Dable would be interesting.
That's what I mean. You're telling me that the New York Giants don't look at their roster and go, oh, we can compete for this division with
Dak in the same division?
If you're going to get Shedeur, what do you care?
And the Giants theoretically would have room.
Yeah. You don't think there's a team like the Giants, like the Jets, like the Steelers that would go and look at Dak and go, hey, I like our roster. We don't need Patrick Mahomes to win our division. We don't need Josh Allen to win our division. And once we're in the dance, let's roll. Let's see what happens. Like, I don't know. I think moving Dak is not the biggest issue there. I think it's getting up to go get Shedeur. I think it's harder to go get the picks together to go get Shedeur.
You still have to get the Parsons deal done unless you move. Now, Parsons would be an interesting chess piece.
To facilitate a move up?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know who's high enough that could maybe want a quarterback? The Giants are at 5. Now, that doesn't get you all the way there, but that helps. If you're trading with 5 instead of 12, that helps.
Huh.
Do you do 5 for Parsons straight up?
I'd think about it.
I think they would too. And that's something I would bet on. It's Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. We'll wrap up the show.
I'll give you a pick in the next segment.
Yeah, and we got to pick the Creighton game as well. I'm notoriously very good at. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla from Hurrdat Sports Radio. Coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And got to remind you about our friends over at Game Day Men's Health. I just went last week, got my updated blood drawn, got all the labs done, make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. It's one of the coolest things about going over there. It's not just a impersonal online thing. They talk to you about what your labs were last time, what they look like this time, and where you need to be. It's customized to you, not a one-size-fits-all. DB knows that too.
Yeah, if you guys think I'm better the last 3 months because I enjoy working with you more, that's not it.
That's never been the case.
That's not it. It's totally Game Day Men's Health. So
it makes me much more bearable to be around.
There you go. A lot less fog.
Make sure you get over to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Get an appointment started at that Southwest Omaha location. Tell them that we sent you. They will take great care of you the same way they've taken great care of us. And same way DB's been taking great care of our listeners with his winners. He cooled off a little, but
yeah,
if you're listening to DB, you're still plus money.
The record is extremely gaudy.
Speaks for itself.
I'm a little concerned at the two I liked early because I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Like what happened with the Nova Xavier line? I need somebody, and I'm not going to say smarter than me because I know TK will be the first to chime in. That clearly is not the case. Where did that line start versus where it is now?
Okay, so you said you had it at 7.5 now?
Yeah.
I've got it at 2.5.
Okay. So this is
that might be off.
Okay.
That might just be off.
So because you see the jump, right?
Yeah, from starts opens at 3.5.
I'm like, that can't be right.
Jumps to 7.5, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then what's the number because I said, it should be about 3.5.
Yeah. So
and I've got it at 2.5. Xavier favored at
I like Xavier quite a bit.
You like Xavier minus the 2.5?
Yes, I do.
Against Villanova.
Yes.
At the Centris Center.
Ooh, Centris.
You're not taking it 7.5 though, right? You like it at the 2.5.
I didn't know why it said that.
Yeah, no, that's nonsense. That's a terrible number.
Now I'll tell you what. That's one because sometimes I need to distinguish whether it's just likes and what I would tell you.
Likes versus locks.
To be on the
Yeah.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
Should be a T-shirt. Likes versus locks.
Maybe that's the segment. Likes versus locks.
Likes versus locks. This number is a little low, but it's big for a reason. How is Marquette only, and I say only loosely, 13.5 over DePaul?
Yeah, that feels low.
Now, I told you and Maddie this as a weirdo who is, I'm not a DePaul honk, but I do watch a lot of bad Big East because it's only because I can equip myself with projections. Like I need to see.
Sure.
So sometimes I'll endure.
You're
like, why are you watching DePaul? I'm like, because it's not because I'm a glutton for punishment. It's because I'm like,
although maybe a little.
I do want to watch a guy. I do want to watch Holtman with 14 new guys.
For some reason, it's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Like there's a curiosity there for sure.
And he's got some good pieces. So I'm like,
and he's been good before.
And the other, like, full disclosure is DePaul is this job that I've long time argued against, much like Illinois football, that because of proximity does not make you a sleeping giant.
Does not make it a good job necessarily.
I think and everybody, the right guy goes to DePaul, and I'm like, you guys have been telling me this for 25 years. Like
that area seems to be that way with a lot of teams.
Well, I mean, I think there's this illusion about Chicago, and people forget like
the illusion's bigger with Illinois football
85%
because
85% of the people that are in that area can't wait to get out.
Well, here's the other thing: is Illinois and Chicago are not the same thing. Right, Chicago people don't identify with the rest of Illinois. The rest of Illinois doesn't identify with Chicago.
It's vastly different.
So, like, being in Champaign for Illinois football does not help them that much in Chicago. It helps them a lot in St. Louis, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Does not really help them that much in Chicago.
It's kind of like Bloomington and Gary.
Yeah, a little bit, a little different demographics.
Dude, people from Gary sometimes don't want to go back to Gary. It's kind of scary.
Well, yeah, nobody likes Indiana.
And I watched Notre Dame or DePaul literally as you guys are rolling, probably eye rolling. I wish I was in the same place as you two. Literally eye rolling as I'm telling you. You guys realize DePaul has scored 5 points in 9.5 minutes of game time? Like I texted you.
You did text that real time, and I'm
because at some point I just was
why are
like,
you watching this?
I know. But after like a 30-3 run, I'm like, what is going on? Like nobody that's an adult in Power Fives can be this bad.
Should be that bad, right? So I think there are different lines out here for that Villanova Xavier game for what it's worth, because Vegas Insiders has it at 7.5, ESPN has it at 2.5, DraftKings has it at -3. I think there's a weird. I don't know if Vegas Insiders is just way off.
Vegas Insider is connected to Scores and Odds, and Scores and Odds is the other place that has that 7.5. So maybe that's it.
Maybe, but there does appear to be a discrepancy. But you're right. That Marquette DePaul line is way too low.
For as bad as DePaul is,
yes,
right?
And as good as Marquette is.
Because Marquette's pretty good.
Yeah, and they'll smother them. Like Marquette will smother. They will smother DePaul. So that's the other one I was actually looking at was 13.5 for Marquette.
The other one that I like, I love Arizona.
Ooh, what's that one?
5.5 at home against Baylor.
Ooh. 5. That seems low.
Not really.
I smell bet.
Baylor's top 25.
They're okay.
Baylor, I think, is better than you think.
You think so?
Yeah.
Am I putting too much stock into them getting waxed by Iowa State last week? I've got a little PTSD.
I don't know. Did you watch Iowa State and Texas Tech?
No.
It was an incredible game.
I don't think I caught that one.
And Iowa State ended up winning, I don't know, 88-87 in overtime.
Yeah, that was this weekend, right?
Texas Tech was favored.
Really?
By 1.
That's odd.
Oh, it was crazy. It was like, this is weird.
Yeah, Iowa State's really good.
And it was still a 1-point game.
Yeah, that's really strange.
Vegas is no joke.
I know. I don't totally know what to do with the Big 12.
Okay, so that's kind of my question.
Yeah, I don't totally know what to do with them. At first blush, that number doesn't feel right. But
So I've seen 2 really, really, really bad lines, and they both involved Kansas.
Okay.
I saw Kansas as a 5.5-point favorite. Win by 50.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other one was Cincinnati, Kansas. And I can't it was 3, I think it was 3.5 or something, Kansas. And Kansas was losing at the half. It's 26-25.
Yeah.
They ended up winning 54-40 the other day.
Yeah.
I'm like, so maybe Vegas doesn't know what to do with the Big 12 either.
That would make sense. It does sort of feel like a crapshoot a little bit. Like right now, it feels pretty.
But I'll tell you
fluid.
one team, I'm going to watch them for another 2 or 3 games. Who would I tell you that I think is pretty good in the Big 12?
Who?
West Virginia.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday we were talking about this.
And
I said, well, D-Rock.
They're the beneficiary of some soft lines.
Because they don't know what to. I don't think people know what to do with them yet.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin
West Virginia
is pretty dangerous.
I would buy that.
I think they're a good basketball team.
I mean, and this is biased because
and I think the last time you guys probably actually sat down and watched them was it Louisville probably?
Yes. Yeah,
and
probably.
Over the break, yeah.
Yeah. I probably haven't watched a West Virginia game since then.
Because that was on early because it was on it was one of those weird.
It was one of the it was a daytime game though because of the timing of it. But no, I could buy that. Listen, I'm always going to give D-Rock the benefit of the doubt because that dude can coach his brains out. And it doesn't surprise me that his style sort of fits my eye of what West Virginia should be, kind of that grimy style. Like I'm not surprised he's doing well.
And it's weird too because as he and
tomorrow he's going to play a team that's going to out grimy him.
Houston?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
Well, I mean, you heard grimy and you're like, Kelvin Sampson. It's immediately. I mean,
I'm telling you, I still think that team is better than their ranking.
You want to look at
and don't give me a hard time about Illinois because they're not healthy.
No, you want to give me if you just tell me like good but disgusting basketball, instantly I think Houston.
Yeah, they're something else.
Yeah, that's just how he rolls. Like that's how Sampson rolls.
I think there's an element of Marquette to that too.
Oh, for sure. I think so. Like good but gross.
Yeah.
That's the
It's like
we got like versus lock and we got good but gross. That's what we're what we're on today for college basketball.
At one point I was thinking to myself, this because the DePaul line against who was I just laughing at? Xavier, yeah. Because I told you I want to know about Xavier. Me and you, Jake, like that was a knockdown drag out.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't get any B prep started yesterday because
I don't know.
We're arguing about Big East basketball
After the top 3 in the Big East. I don't know.
And I'm like, I'm like, guys, I don't think
Xavier's very good. I don't either. But I also don't think Villanova is very good.
You know, we went to KenPom, we went to rankings, we looked at efficiency, and I was like, you know, I did watch them for some stretches against DePaul where they went on that run, and I was like, that's not that bad. But DePaul does
stink horribly.
I'm gonna say this. I know it's DePaul. They have some good pieces.
Sure, but overall they're not very good. Here's the thing. Here's the weird thing with Villanova Xavier tonight, though, right? Is I'll take Sean Miller over Kyle Neptune. I think I take Villanova over Xavier though tonight. Like I think Villanova is better than Xavier this year, despite the fact that I think Kyle Neptune rots. But Eric Dixon's been saving his butt all year and will probably continue to do so.
Lay the 2.5.
You want to lay the 2.5?
I'm telling you, Xavier in Arizona.
How do you feel about Creighton tonight minus 8.5 against Providence?
I like the Jays.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
That number feels a little. I know Providence is bad, but that number feels a little big for me.
Does it? Because you're.
But I'm struggling right now with this.
No, that number's right.
That's fair. Yeah, I'll trust you because I don't have a good feel.
I like the Jays.
I'm a little pessimistic on the Jays right now.
My buddy was asking about St. John's Creighton a couple weeks ago, and it was just one. I said, crazy thing is St. John's is a better team, but that number's right. And Creighton ended up winning by 1.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back tomorrow with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.